You got McMullen and McDonald here with you on Birds 365. We have Dave Zangaro from NBC Sports Philadelphia, who, as much as I love Dave, I'm getting tired of seeing him. He's on TV all the time. Damn, during this rush of free agency, every time, oh, there's Dave Zangaro. And we're glad to have him on our TV show, too, here as well. Dave, I've asked everyone who's come on with us the last couple of days, of the three big signings, Huff, Barkley, CJ, GJ, which one will be most impactful on the upcoming season of the Eagles?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I'll go with CJ Gardner-Johnson because that was the area where they really needed to improve the most. In my estimation, was their defense, but specifically the secondary. They need some playmakers back there. And look, I don't think CJ is a Pro Bowl safety, but he's a playmaker. He can make some things happen, and they just need that so bad. I mean, last year was really tough to watch that secondary. I mean, no one was making any plays. So if he makes a few, I think that'll really change that defense.
Yeah, I think you can make an argument for all three, Dave, depending on which route you want to go. But I'm dying to ask you this question, and obviously the biggest name is Saquon Barkley, because you're one of those guys that practice every day, and I've been to practice too many times over the years, and I'm way too old. And anytime, Dave, I hear somebody talk about getting a player in space in March and April, I cringe. I think about Donnell Humphrey and Darren Sproles and 21 Pony. I think about Jalen Reagor stretching the field vertically and horizontally. I think about DeAndre Swift on wheel routes, and it never comes to fruition unless your coach is Kyle Shanahan. Nobody has the discipline to do it. Nobody sticks with it. They might script it a little bit if they have a really good player, and then they forget about it. Your thoughts when you hear getting a player in space, manufacturing things?
It can work. Like we've seen it here a little bit when Sproles was here and he was under Doug Peterson. Like there were times we'd see him on a wheel route, and those were big plays. And the screen game back then worked. You know, if you consider the screen game a part of getting a player in space, then yeah, like I think it can work without all the Shanahan stuff that you brought up. I think like those are ways to do it. I think that's the big one of the bigger questions about Barkley to me is like we know how good of a receiver he can be. It's just a matter of whether or not they work to get him the football. I think they have to. Like I don't think you can maximize him as a player if you're not throwing him the ball. And the interesting thing here is like DeAndre Swift, a pretty good pass catching running back, and the Eagles didn't throw to him very much. And I think a lot of this is like a lot of the balls that get thrown to running backs are dump offs, right? Yeah. And when you have a quarterback like Jalen Hurts, if there's a dump off, he'll just run it for a first down. So it kind of eliminates.
I think he should because
he should. Yeah, it's easier. It's a higher percentage play than a pass. But the interesting thing with Saquon, and I'm really curious to see how Kellen Moore uses him, is because Saquon could play receiver. He's a vertical threat, like a legit vertical threat as a running back, and that's rare. Like you don't see that a ton. I don't know if they're going to use it. Like that's kind of where we get back to the question about these two offenses meshing. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know the influence of each guy, and until we know that, like I don't know how exactly they're going to use Saquon, but they better throw him the ball because if not, I mean, I don't think they're going to maximize his value.
All right. If we don't want to project into the future because we just don't know, you're right. It's the future. Let's look at the past instead. Since Jalen Hurts took over as the quarterback of the Eagles, they've not been good throwing the ball to a back out of the backfield. That's Shane Steichen. That's Brian Johnson. Two different coordinators. You can't just say, well, it's the offense coordinator. Two different guys. And it's Sirianni's offense. So, yeah, he's got to take a little of the blame. But how much of it falls at the feet of the quarterback? Because that's one thing that scares me. I think either A, he's just not good at it, or B, he doesn't want to be bothered doing it. And when it's read number 3, he makes sure he throws, forcing the ball to read number 1 or read number 2. He never gets to the back as the third read. Why should we have faith that Jalen Hurts will be better at it this year just because Saquon Barkley's in the backfield?
Yeah, look, I don't know what's going to happen either, but I think we've seen Jalen trust some targets more than others, and I think Saquon is the type of player who could earn his trust. I think when he's in the pocket looking for someone to pass to, and he sees Zach Pascal, he's going, "Oh, I'm not doing that. I don't I don't want
Or
to pick up
Zach
Zach
Pascal.
Pascal."
But he was a hell of a blocker,
Or-
just
Yeah.
like Saquon.
But like if you see Saquon Barkley, maybe the bell goes off. Yeah, that guy is a playmaker. I can get him the football. I think that's the hope, right? Like because he hasn't thrown to the backs a bunch, but he also hasn't had a guy like Saquon with this type of talent. So, yeah, that's a big part of this. It's tough to kind of break down. Well, why haven't they thrown to the backs? Is it just because this is the offense? Is it because a lot of those plays are, like I mentioned, kind of dump offs, or is it because the quarterback doesn't want to? I think we'll find out some of those answers pretty soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because DeAndre, I mean, let's be honest, DeAndre was a proven receiver out of the backfield in Detroit. He had 62 catches. Saquon Barkley hasn't had 62 since his rookie year. And I believe he missed 4 games. He missed 4 games each year in Detroit. So that's 62 in, at the time, it might have been 16 games. So 13 games, whatever. You get my point. He caught the football a lot. So he was a proven commodity. That wasn't a great team, but you knew we can catch the football. Now, is he as dynamic? No, he's not as dynamic. So that concerns me a little bit. And then just the touches, Dave. Typically, and this is a larger question about the shift in philosophy, the sea change. When did it become real for you, Dave Zangaro, that the Eagles were going after a running back and willing to pay him this money? And then a running back who's had 1,500 touches, with a lot of them on the MetLife turf, which just destroys bodies. As you know, you talk to so many players about that. Is that surprising?
I like you said that like I tore my ACL. As you know, that MetLife.
Well, yeah. Well, you know about the lightning at MetLife Stadium, but not the ACL.
Look, I think the touches, the usage, that's a legitimate concern because we've seen players drop off after that type of workload. I don't think there's any mistake about that. That's where the Eagles pro personnel department has to try to just watch him and see how much juice they think he has left, and that's an inexact science. So there's definite risk involved with the Saquon move, no doubt about it. I mean, I think it's part of the reason they haven't been in on running backs before is because there's this drop off. In terms of when I thought it was legit, yeah, there was so much smoke around it that eventually you're like, I guess they're really going to do this. But even knowing all that, it's still a little surprising to hear that they signed Saquon Barkley. Like it's still, it's odd to me still, but like then you saw, I think what really kind of tipped the scales a little bit is you saw those deals to DeAndre Swift and Tony Pollard at $8 million per season. And I'm guessing the justification from the Eagles is going to be, well, why would we pay those guys $8 million a year and we can have one of the best running backs in the league for $12 million a year? Like, would you rather pay Saquon $12 a year or Tony Pollard $8 a year? Yeah, I kind of get it from that perspective. And I do think the weaker running back class had a lot to do with this market.
Yeah, the draft. Yeah, bad draft class. Yeah,
in the draft. Yeah, I think it had a lot to do with this, the market and free agency, because it's a lot higher than I thought it would be for some of those. Like DeAndre Swift's a good player. Is he an $8 million per year player at that position? I don't think so. So I kind of understand the Eagles' thought process there, but yeah, there's definite risk.
Dave, last year, the Eagles, when the season was over and done with, ended up the 9th best team in the NFL defensively against the run, which is not bad. If you're in the top 10, that's not bad. About midway through the season, they were the number 1 team in the NFL against the run, and they dropped precipitously over the second half of the season down to number 9. What have they done to improve that other than bring in Vic Fangio?
Yeah, I mean they haven't done much. They lost Fletcher Cox, who was their most consistent defensive lineman last year, which is a problem. I have a tough time looking back at the second half of last season and evaluating almost anything, especially on defense. And I don't want to give excuses. The players didn't play well, but man, it was a mess. Like changing coordinators and this just defense that didn't make any sense. No one knew what they were doing. Honestly, the evaluation process, like for the team, even has to be just a miserable experience this year because I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you separate all those elements and like the Matt Patricia of it all. Like, how do you do that? It's a tricky thing. You're right, though. I mean, they haven't added enough on defense. I think linebacker is a glaring need right now. And I'll be honest with you, the linebacker market this offseason has been way higher than I expected, probably higher than the Eagles expected. And that's probably why they haven't signed one yet. But the top names are gone. I mean, you're left with, the cupboard's a little bare in free agency. They might get creative.
Left with the Zach Cunninghams of the world. We might as well bring Zach back. Howie was raving about him. Why not?
He was setting us all up for this.
Yeah.
Maybe a trade is possible. We've seen before when they kind of get priced out of a market. We saw it with cornerback a few years ago. They got priced out of the cornerback market, and then they got creative. They traded for Slay. Maybe something like that could happen. Because, I mean, some of the linebacker contracts, we knew Patrick Queen was going to get paid, but the Kenneth Murray contract, am I missing?
Frankie Louvu, I thought would be too expensive, but I settled on guys like Al Shire.
And I liked him. I thought he'd be a good fit. If they like Nakobe Dean, Al Shire at the will would make some sense to me.
Yeah. Josie Jewell, because he worked with Vic in Denver. I thought Blake Cashman would have been a good fit, but they lost. I don't know if they lost out or were interested. Even Willie Gay, maybe somebody in that range. I'm really surprised they haven't done something, but it's early in the process. It's only a couple days in. But as you mentioned, that the free agent market's kind of picked over, except there's that Jerome Baker was with Vic in Miami. But again, some of those some of those Miami guys didn't like Vic's scheme, so who knows where he is? I think a lot of people make those connections and don't realize it can go a positive way, but it can go a negative way as well on both sides. They got it. I mean, if they had to play today, and thankfully they don't, it'd be Nakobe Dean if he's healthy, and Ben Van Sumeren. I mean, at this point, Zach Cunningham's looking pretty good.
I don't know. You saw Ben Van Sumeren in that preseason game.
Yeah.
What do you have? 200 tackles in that game?
Yeah. Hey, Ben's, Tyrell Dotson's a guy who came in Buffalo when Matt Milano was hurt and really played well. He's still out there. There's a couple guys.
And Buffalo signed Nick Morrow, so they're good at linebacker.
Yeah, they're all set with Nick Morrow.
Maybe that's not
I think alike. I was just about to say, well, wait a minute, Buffalo let that guy walk out the door to sign Nick Morrow. That tells you what they think about the players. So,
it's a nice trade. It's a nice trade.
Probably pass on that one. All right. Eagles get their kicker locked up for the next 4 years. And good on him, because we all like Jake Elliott, and he deserves to be a highly paid kicker, paid as much as the top kicker in the NFL. Bit of a surprise. Eagles don't usually go to the top of the market, and they did so with the kicker, and they get to balance out their cap a little bit for the upcoming year because they do the extension. How big a deal is that? Is that just like standard operating procedure, or should we be like, now the Eagles are good. They put a position away, an important position, because all field goal kickers do is win and lose games for you. How big was that yesterday?
Yeah, it's nice to get done. It's top of the market now. We'll see what it is when the extension. I mean, he was close to top of the market the last extension too, and then other contracts come down. So, but he's been great, and he's a guy you don't want to lose. It's amazing because he was already a good kicker, but there were some shaky moments in that 19, 20 range, and then since 21 and this new staff, he's been incredible. He's made 15 of 17 kicks from 50 plus since
Whoa.
the 21 season began.
That's unbelievable.
I mean, this dude is nails. And that kick in Buffalo, that 59-yarder, might be the best field goal I've ever seen.
Yeah. And I still say he set the Eagles. It was his kick against the Giants that set off the Eagles' run to a Super Bowl.
You know
I
what's
really
crazy? I
believe
did a
that.
story on during last season when he was on this great run. I did a story about like the origin of how they got him, because it was kind of a fluky thing. Caleb Sturgis gets hurt. He was a draft pick that year out of Memphis. He goes to Cincinnati. He loses the kicking competition to Randy Bullock.
Yeah. Bad
And
job
then they try to get him. He's on the practice squad, so he's available. The Eagles actually watched him miss a 60-yarder in the preseason. He had plenty of leg on it, and I think he banged it off the upright. Like a few inches could have decided whether or not Jake Elliott was here. If he makes that kick, maybe he wins that job. He's never available. It took so many kind of crazy things to line up for him to get here. And even that 61-yarder, John, against the Giants, like if he misses that, I know that's a high degree difficulty kick, but he would have been like 3 for 5 or 3 for 6 at that point.
Yeah, who knows? At that point, he was
a short leash for kickers. So,
and heck, Alshon Jeffrey, the play before, setting it up. You know, people don't like to talk about Alshon, but you know, he had a big impact on that game. But just the fuel of that kick. Now 61-yarders are like we yawn at them, Dave. But back at that point, it was like, oof, that was a big time kick. And yeah, Jake Elliott. And the ironic thing is, place kicking is probably the worst thing he does. The guy's great at everything. He's great at ping pong, golf.
It is funny though. Like his teammates always like, you know, there's who's the best athlete.
Yeah.
And
Jake Elliott.
Always say him, and it's like, well, what are we like? What? It's just so funny to me that like everyone says Jake Elliott, and then like AJ Brown walks by, and you're like, but like
softball. It's you know how I describe it. Anything that involves eye-hand coordination, Jake's the best at. You know,
it depends on your definition of like what athletic means.
Exactly.
Yeah. If you're talking about throwing down a two-hand slam, I'm going to take AJ Brown over.
Yeah, I'll take
Jake Elliott.
AJ's a hell of a baseball player too. But Jake Elliott, phenomenal. Carson Wentz, superstar softball player. He was banging home runs out in that charity game. So
I still think that's why they kept Richard Rodgers around.
Oh yeah,
they did.
Richard was the biggest ringer of them all.
Yeah,
a tremendous softball player.
All right, listen, both of you two guys are writers. I'm gonna come up with my own narrative here and ask you whether when I'm done typing, are you gonna hit save, are you gonna hit print, or are you gonna hit delete?
Definitely not gonna hit print.
Well, for your own personal edification, it's going to be so good you're going to want to save it.
PDF. All right.
May 1st, 2024, Philadelphia Eagles re-sign Quez Watkins. Print, save, delete.
Yeah,
draft has come and gone. Haven't had another wide receiver. According to the head coach, Quez Watkins makes his two other wide receivers better players because he's so good at taking off. He's such a threat at taking the top off the defense. That's what makes Devontae Smith and AJ Smith and Devontae as great players as they are. Will Quez Watkins, after the draft, because they're not going to sign him before the draft, but if they get shut out on all those guys who ran 4.33 at the combine, will they re-sign Quez Watkins? I'm saying yes. Are you hitting save or delete?
Delete.
Yeah, I'm deleting. You know, I don't even think Quez wants back here. No, he doesn't. He doesn't want to deal with this again. So it's both avenues. By the way, I don't think the Eagles want him back. I don't think Quez wants to be back. But that does bring up an important, because Devontae Parker's here, and I think that's the more interesting question, Dave, because I don't think that means that much. They essentially, because of offset language with his Patriots contract, they're paying him the veteran minimum. Doesn't seem like a fit at his age, his size. Well, you know, other than why is Devontae Parker here? Because I still think they want a better third receiver, a better fit at third receiver. That move, it's not a big deal, but it just didn't make a lot of sense to me.
To me, it makes sense if you're looking at, you know, he's the fourth receiver that makes sense to me. Like if he's just a backup who can rotate in here and there, yeah, that's fine. Veteran minimum guy. I don't. You're right. I don't like him as a fit as the third guy because even though they're going to move these people around, like the receivers around, he's not a slot. Like most of his snaps in his career have come outside. So if he's a backup, in case one of those top guys ever gets hurt, like yeah, I think that's okay. You get him some snaps here and there if he makes the team, but I don't think he's the third guy. I think if you're looking at the 5 receivers on the team, you have AJ and Devontae 1, 2, you have Parker 4, you have Covey 5. That 3 is still open.
Could it be Britton Covey? Could they give Britton Covey a chance to be that slot receiver who can run option routes? He's got tremendous short area quickness. Everybody looks at him and they roll his eye. He's a freaking best punt returner in the league or close to it last year. He's proved he's got some explosion. He's a high IQ guy. You talk to him all the time, and he's writing notes. He's really studying the opposition each week. He'd bring that same sort of presence to that role. Is that one where the Eagles should roll the dice and see if they can create a Wes Welker, Julian Edelman type who can run those option routes?
No. I like Britton Covey, no. And I think they can continue to develop him. But I think relying on that in a season where like you need to upgrade that 5th skill position, like I wouldn't.
But should he be given a chance? I agree they shouldn't count on it. Like that to me is a different definition. Should they be more open-minded? If he shows up at camp and opportunities, should they consider it?
Well, I mean, how do you separate the two, John? Because like you can't give him a chance if you bring someone else in. But if you bring someone else, you know what I mean? You can't rely on him to do it. So like, keep developing him and maybe one day he can do that. But I think you need to add somebody. Like you can't just go into camp with what you have. So I like Britton Covey. I think maybe there's something there, but in a season where I mean, we think this could be a good team.
Yeah.
A really good offense. I can't in good faith say, hey, Britton, you're basically a starter in this offense. I can't do that.
Well, let me throw an added layer to it. I mean, they have Barkley, they have AJ, they have Devontae, they have Dallas. I mean, that third receiver isn't getting a lot of traffic in theory, unless somebody gets hurt. I mean, that's a concern with every position. There's only one football. I can't imagine that whomever the third receiver, and by the way, I agree with you, it's not going to be Britton, but whomever it's going to be, things are not going well if that guy's getting a lot of targets.
Yeah, but like last year, was it a problem that they never found a third receiver? Like I think it was that, they were kind of like, is it Quez? Is it Olamide? Is it Julio? And then like when I say the 5th skill guy, I think it could be a tight end too, right?
Yeah,
like I think that position, whether it's a better tight end 2 or a better wide receiver 3, I think that position needs to be better just to balance out this offense a little bit.
Yeah, I just got a text. Alberto said, "That's me." Thanks, Dave Zangaro. So good luck with that, Alberto.
That might be the most surprising move of the Eagles offseason when they re-signed Alberto.
Because Howie traded for him.
Yeah, and that's true. That's
Howie traded for him. But just remember, the coach loves Quez. Just saying. Coach loves Quez. All right, Dave Zangaro, I was lucky enough to have you on WIP with me on Sunday, and I asked you about the defensive line, the edge guys who are available for trade or how it's going to shake out and the like. And you did say the Eagles should ask for a 1 for Josh Sweat. You didn't say they were going to get a 1 for Josh Sweat because they have no chance to get a 1 for Josh Sweat, but you did say they should ask for a 1. If you come down from that one, because the market is what the market is, they got no shot. They're not getting a 1. They're not getting a 2. Is 3 the best they'll get for Josh Sweat at this point?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if Brian Burns isn't getting you 1, I mean, yeah, I think Josh Sweat is a valuable player. Like, I don't know what I'm missing here.
Yeah, what I'm with you. I've thrown out that maybe Vic just wants a different style on the edges because Josh is
it
more
looks
of
that way, right?
Yeah,
like you see like it seems like they have a type, whether it's, like the addition of Bryce Huff kind of shows that. And Sweat is kind of a bigger lumbering guy. Lumbering is not fair to say. He's fairly fast in a straight line, but like, if you have to drop in coverage, that's certainly not going to be his strength. Not going to be BG's strength either, but like, I think everyone's willing to overlook that because it's BG.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it's a type thing. And then that's a little scary too, because you're talking about a 26-year-old edge rusher who like has already proven he can play at a really high level. I think it's always dangerous to just like completely change your personnel to fit one guy's scheme, because, and I know they can't look at it this way. I can look at it this way. What if this doesn't work? Well, what if this season doesn't go well and Vic Fangio's out, and then you got rid of a 26-year-old edge rusher who might fit the next defense really well?
Yeah.
I know they can't look at it like that. They got to be all in on what they're doing, but that's the fear in the back of my mind.
I'm with you. I don't get the Josh Sweat stuff at all, other than, you didn't have a great end of the season, but who did? As you pointed out before, that defense was a disaster. And how do you parse it from Sean Desai to Matt Patricia? It's really difficult. At D Zangaro NBCS, make sure you follow Dave on X. Read him, NBC Sports Philadelphia, and you can watch him. You turn on. Right now, he's probably on somehow. He's probably doing a double spot. So, doing plenty of work.
Flyers highlights. It's not Dave. For a change, it's not Dave right now on NBC Sports Philly.
Doing a ton of good stuff with our buddies John Clark and Ruben Frank and the whole crew there. So, you've done a tremendous thing during free agency. I hate free agency grades. I think they're silly. Sillier than even mock drafts before free agency begins. One thing that's interesting to me, and I don't know if you saw, Rob Motti, our buddy from the AP, reported that the Eagles had an offer out to Joe Flacco to be the backup quarterback. That tells me that Tanner McKee's not going to be the backup. They're going to get a veteran. Is that your sense in the fact that this team probably believes in the backup quarterback more than most, and they're not just going to default to Tanner McKee?
Yeah, I guess so. I was kind of looking forward to seeing if Tanner McKee would be the backup.
So was I.
I saw a lot of good things from him last year. I know it's limited time, but that's why you drafted him, right? Like, if you can get your 6th-round pick to be a backup for 3 years, that's a major expense you've saved. Now, maybe they're like, we just can't trust him in that role, and I kind of get that. But, man, I was kind of thinking like a lower-level veteran, like, and the name I keep coming back to is Easton Stick. And Jody doesn't like that, but I think that
he stinks.
Yeah, but that's kind of the idea, Jody, is like, he's not very good.
Well, nobody's very good as a backup. I mean, they're backups, right?
It was my idea. I'm on record. I think I said it with you the other day, Dave. I know I've said it plenty. Give me a Mason Rudolph. He went in and went 3-0 in the end of the season last year. Actually got the Steelers into the playoffs when it looked like Mike Tomlin's streak was going by the book of winning seasons, and he signs for under $4 million. Is it that much better if I pay Easton Stick 2.5 than 3.9 for Mason Rudolph? I'm actually gonna just shockingly, as an NFL general manager, I think your job is to try and sign the better player.
I get that, but like, I think a low-level veteran. This was my perspective because I like Tanner McKee. I think Tanner McKee can be the backup. If you bring in a low-level veteran who can compete with him, but also a low-level veteran, like Tanner McKee could win that job. And I think that would be the ideal outcome. Like, I think they'd be secretly rooting for Tanner McKee to win that job if it's against a really low-level veteran.
Could Tanner McKee beat out Mason Rudolph?
Maybe, yeah.
Okay, well, then that's why I take Mason Rudolph, because if Tanner McKee's that good, good, yeah, way to go, Tanner. If he beat out Easton Stick, you know what I'm going to say?
$2 million extra dollars for that competition.
He's not beating out Joe Flacco down at the Legacy Diner here in South Jersey.
They didn't get Zane Steichen again thwarting the Eagles by getting Joe Flacco. Dave Z, always a pleasure, buddy. Thank you very much for hopping on. We'll get you in a couple of weeks when we're further down the road, certainly before the draft. Dave does a great job with the draft stuff on NBC Sports as well. So you need to start looking for that when free agency cools. Dave, thank you.
All right, guys,
Thanks,
take
Dave.
care.
Dave Zangaro here with us on Birds 365. All right, quickie timeout. You know what we got to do? Put a bow on the show. Stay right there.